Today on the Daily Dollar, we're talking about quiet quitting. Quitting quietly. It'd be quite nice to quit quietly. You know that thing that gets rebranded every 10 to 20 years to describe why young people are good-for-nothing lazy freeloaders? Yeah, that thing. The media attention it has garnered may have more to do with how clickable the nickname is. After all, why would business management ever take responsibility when they can blame their employees? Sounds easier to me. Let's figure out what quiet quitting even means, whether the impact is real or just creating a lot of noise, and finally determine whether this is a good, bad, or just kinda meh. If you enjoy financial news and information, then hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and keep watching the Daily Dollar. What is all this quiet quitting nonsense about anyway? Unlike the name implies, it actually has nothing to do with quitting. It actually means to do what your job requires. Just make sure you don't do anything more. The purpose of this is to reduce the amount of effort put into your job, devoting more time and energy to other interests outside of your career. The quiet part just means to tone it down over time, so nobody notices. After that, you can just do the minimum requirements your job description demands. This is different from China's lying flat movement, although they have similar motives to strike back at working conditions. So if your boss says you need to move 10 boxes a day, you'd only move 10. The reasoning being that moving any more boxes won't make you any more money. The motivation behind all of this is the employers don't deserve your 100% because they are only willing to give you the minimum required to keep you from finding employment elsewhere. Or so the logic goes, at least. Therefore, quiet quitting is only doing what you're paid for, and no more. Is quiet quitting a good thing then? Well, it can be, depending on your situation. Only doing what is required of you, and only during working hours, can decrease a lot of stress. It could increase your overall happiness as you focus on hobbies, family, and exercise. Taking this approach could have a positive impact on people's lives outside of the workplace. After all, burnout and turnover increased dramatically over the course of the pandemic, and even got its own catchy nickname called the Great Resignation, which has mysteriously gone silent as of late. Must have been the economy or something. There's an argument to be made that by doing this, you increase the negotiating power of employees. After all, if everybody's doing less, your employer will need to either hire more, increase salaries or wages, or reduce the workload of each employee, if they don't go bankrupt. This may or may not work out, but I suppose only time will tell. Well, is there any way this is good for employers too? Some may make the argument by slowing down and taking your time, the quality of your work may increase. This could also be supported by the idea that a decrease in burnout, stress, and turnover would result in a more reliable and stable workforce. At the end of the day, though, it isn't supposed to be a good thing for employers. Then is quiet quitting a bad thing? If you care about promotions, then yes, it can be. While taking it easy won't hurt your pay in the short term, it will impact promotions and therefore pay in the long term. Nobody would be surprised that workers who do the minimum will probably not be given more responsibility. For those who don't care, the tight labor market probably means layoffs in stable or growing industries are unlikely. Those in more volatile industries may not be as fortunate. In such a scenario, the worst performers are likely to go first. Another risk for quiet quitters to be worried about is the rise of the robots. One of the ways Starbucks is trying to handle their little unionization issue is with automation. They are working on a machine to perform as many functions as possible, to produce quality coffee at the highest quantity. Factory-made mass-produced pumpkin spice latte. And most importantly, to reduce their labor force and reduce the skill needed from each employee. After all, if your only job is to move the cup from machine to consumer, you are far easier to replace. On the other side of the coin, if you're a government employee, then you probably have nothing to worry about beyond a civil war. This all means the pros and cons of this strategy are highly dependent on the situation. So what has changed? The status quo may be the more likely scenario. The reality may be less exciting than a trendy new work paradigm, taking the world by storm, empowering employees, and taking the fight to the overpowered, evil companies. However, to anyone who has had a job, we all know that people work for different reasons. Those reasons will determine their motivations. The concept of working for money isn't wrong, but it is misleading. People actually work to satisfy their needs and wants. Money is just the tool we use to make transactions. The needs are pretty straightforward. People work to meet their needs for housing, food, utilities, transportation, and those kinds of basic needs. Wants are more nuanced and differ from person to person. Some people want status, more luxurious goods, travel the world, start a family, pursue passions or hobbies, and whatever else you could imagine. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then I'm sure you've all heard this before. The point is, different wants drive different people. In most workplaces, you have the majority who perform their job well and care enough to at least be good at what they do. You have another group who is highly ambitious and goes above and beyond. They are the ones who are most likely to get promoted or switch jobs to get those promotions. And finally, you have the group that does the absolute minimum. These would be the newly nicknamed quiet quitters. The only problem is they have always existed, and the sizes of these groups are unlikely to change because human wants haven't really changed. You could debate that the boomers cared more about status and luxury goods, or the millennials care about traveling and financial freedom. They both require money, and both require people to keep working, and earning more can speed things up. At the end of the day, this is likely just people in society reacting to a larger macro change they don't care enough to understand. US demographics are going through a bit of a shift, resulting in a labor shortage that could last for 2 decades, given current conditions at least. The boomers are nearly all retired, and they didn't have enough kids to replace themselves. Immigration rates are not nearly high enough to fill in the gap. If you're European or Japanese, then you have been experiencing this for decades now. This is one of the reasons why labor in those regions has been more highly valued than in the States, plus a few cultural differences don't hurt either. And when labor supply decreases and demand goes unchanged, the only way to remedy this is automation, immigration, or increased employee bargaining power. People may not know about these macro events at play, but they can tell that they are harder to replace and can demand more for their effort. The lying flat movement is similar, but they have a stronger focus on working conditions, while quiet quitting has more to do with working in general. When people notice societal changes, sometimes our desire for explanations results in some not so accurate conclusions coming out of that societal fog. Unless you're interested in economics and/or geopolitics, this is not common knowledge. Every young generation faces the same stigma of being lazy or entitled. The boomers think millennials are entitled because they live in an age that offers the ease of digital technology. The baby boomers' parents thought they were entitled because they didn't live through a world war or a depression. At the end of the day, we should all strive to give our kids an easier world to live in. Changes in a society will always cause some level of scare amongst the people, but understanding these changes will always give you more authority over your decisions than if you only listen to the loudest and trendiest answers. Support the content we make by hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, and keep watching The Daily Dollar.